All right, here we are, chapter 4, part 2. This is where we ended. We ended talking about glucose, talking about how in plants the production of making food and then basically eating it for energy starts in that chloroplast and goes to mitochondria. So these sugars we talk about, this glucose, has many names. Glucose is a tiny sugar molecule. If we change it around a little bit, the molecules, we can get sucrose. Sucrose is a sugar, and that's white table sugar. If we move it around again, we can have maltose, and all those molecules will create a sugar that's two sugars. It's called a disaccharide. Saccharide means sugar. And maltose is a sugar in malted milk balls. Those round chocolate pasty things. I don't like them, but many people like them. If we want to move the sugar molecules again and make them very long molecules, we turn that sugar into starch. Those are all forms of carbohydrates. So here's a picture of starch. You think of starch in potatoes, rice, wheat products, that sort of thing. But a long sugar molecule called starch can be another long sugar molecule called cellulose. So here is a picture of a type of cellulose. It makes up tree trunks and the bark. It also makes up the leaves, the stalk. It makes up corn. It makes up all kinds of things in plants. It gives it rigidity, a little bit of structure. And again, my favorite long sugar molecule, which is another carbohydrate, is chitin. And chitin, again, is a carbohydrate that makes up the exoskeleton of bugs. And you know that they have this because when you step on them and they crunch, that's what you hear, the chitin, that long sugar molecule. So moving on, we're talking more about cellular respiration. So cellular respiration, again, is the process that we take from our food, which is a stored potential energy that is a form of chemical energy, and we're rearranging and breaking the molecules apart to make a form of kinetic energy, energy that we can use to move. Move because your heartbeat moves because your lungs and your ribs move to breathe. All of these are considered movements that need energy. So what we use is something with this organelle called cell respiration. Now the organelle used is mitochondria. And there's two forms that we express this type of energy. One is called aerobic and one is called anaerobic. Think about aerobic energy like aerobics. You're stepping, you're moving, you're out of breath, jazzercise, whatever it might be. That's aerobic, right? You're using more oxygen than normal. If it's anaerobic, it's like playing baseball, softball, or golf. It doesn't require being in a ton of really good shape because you're not using a ton of energy. You use bursts of it, right? You use it to swing the bat, you use it to run to first base, but then you're sitting on first base for a while waiting for your buddy to hit the ball, which now it's like 2 strikes and 3 balls, and you've been there for 15 minutes, right? That's considered anaerobic. You're not doing a hard, steady energy. You're using the regular oxygen. You're not using extra. So an means without. So anaerobic technically means word-wise without oxygen, but you're just using the regular. You're not using any extra word. This aerobic means that you need extra breathing. You need extra oxygen, and that's what you and I would do in aerobics. So this is an aerobic process. You're using oxygen. So when you breathe in, there's that oxygen. And when you eat, there's that sugar that's being brought in, that food molecule. That's not just sugar, but you're bringing it in to make this in your body. And what you breathe out is carbon dioxide. You're breathing carbon dioxide not because your lungs are a huge HEPA filter. You're breathing out because that's the end product. That's the leftover of cell respiration. So if you notice, if you go for a run, you're breathing more heavy out. That means you're using more and you're making more byproduct. If you're just sitting here like I am, you're minimally breathing carbon dioxide, just a little bit out because you're not doing a lot of cell respiration. You're anaerobic. So the amount in and out determines if you're actually in that cell respiration stage. So when we go through here in our slides, all the cells of your body, they have mitochondria in them because your heart cells need energy, your lung cells need energy, your muscle cells need a lot of energy to move. So this is happening all over your body. Now, the more that you're doing active movements, you hear about metabolism. Metabolism isn't how heavy or light you are, how much weight you gain. Metabolism, actually, what it means is the sum, the adding up of all the chemical reactions in your body at once. So if you are constantly moving all day long and you never sit still, your little tornado, that means you have a ton of reactions going on constantly in your body. So your metabolism goes up. You burn efficiently and you burn more of your potential energy. So typically you are more slender. If you don't do a lot of movements during the day, maybe you have a desk job, or maybe you're a stay-at-home mom and Your kids are very young, like newborn or older, and you don't have to do a lot for them. Well, you're sitting around a lot, so your metabolism is lower, so your weight typically stays the same, or maybe you can gain a few pounds only because all the chemical reactions in your body have slowed down. They're not as fast as someone else that moves. So metabolism isn't weight, it's a sum of all the reactions in your body. And the outcome of that could be weight or could be body size, like if you're lean or muscular or neither. All of that has an effect. So that happens with cell respiration. We talked about previously how a calorie is a unit of measurement of what's in your food for energy. So here it shows all the energy that's in your food. Now this 3 grams of protein is better energy than these 8 grams of fat, or if there's any trans fat or cholesterol, but you do need a little fat and little cholesterol in your diet every day. Your cells, remember, phospholipid bilayer, lipids are fats. So you do need some of this in your diet, just not tons and tons, and our American diet has a lot of fats in it. So as we talk about cell respiration, we're having food go into our body for the main purpose of making energy for our cell. So here is that cell respiration equation, which looks just the opposite to photosynthesis, right? Photosynthesis was water, the sun, and carbon dioxide equaling oxygen and a sugar, right? Well, cell respiration is opposite. We're eating the food, we're breathing in the oxygen, and in the end, we're going to exhale a lot of carbon dioxide. We're going to make water because we're going to sweat, or when you work out, you instantly have to pee. Well, that would be the extra water, and now you have more energy. Usually when you work out, during the day, you actually feel like you have more energy. If you never work out, you're always tired, you need the 3 o'clock nap. So it actually is a good process for your body. Now, what this is also showing with these lines is that cell respiration has 3 cycles, 3 steps. Remember, photosynthesis had 2. It had the light reaction, and then it also had the Calvin cycle. So photosynthesis has 3. It has what's called glycolysis. This is when it's anaerobic. I'm sitting here in glycolysis right now. That it just is happening. I don't need extra oxygen. If I had to get up and run across and chase my dogs, I'd now kick into the aerobic part of cell respiration. I'm burning more energy, more reactions. I need more energy for my cells. So the second cycle is called citric acid. It's now moved into, you see the mitochondria in the background? So the 2 cycles, the 2 steps here, which is citric acid and electron transport, happen inside the mitochondria. Glycolysis and me just sitting here anaerobic is actually in the cytoplasm. It's not in the mitochondria. I'm not making extra energy right now. I'm just making energy to sustain. So as soon as I need extra, we kick into the next 2 steps. If I sit here all day, I never go into the other steps of cell respiration. I don't make more reactions. I don't stay lean. My metabolism slows down. So it's all related to you in biology. So again, as soon as we need extra energy, we jump into mitochondria, go in the second stage, citric acid, go into the third stage, electron transport. And this is like a water wheel, electron transport. Electrons are charges. Charges help make reactions. Reactions make things move faster. So this electron transport chain is throwing out a whole bunch of ATPs. Here, glycolysis and me sitting here, I'm making only 2 ATPs per sugar molecule. Once I get here, I'm making about 23 to 26 ATPs per sugar molecule. So I'm making much more in this area, but I also need much more. Right here, as I'm sitting here in glycolysis, I don't need a lot, but maybe I would. So this is how cell respiration works, and your body can go back and forth all the time. This is why runners and athletes eat a lot, right? Because they're working out all the time, they're in their sports and their games all the time, they're in this section burning a lot, so they need to eat a lot. So that's that one section. As we move through, here's that chemical equation again. You have your glucose, you have your oxygen, you have your carbon dioxide and your water. Again, you know this because when you work out, you breathe heavier and you sweat, and a lot of times you have to go to the bathroom. So this is where those end products are coming from. This is the chemical energy to do work. This is just showing photosynthesis and cell respiration. So here's photosynthesis, this top green one. And if we go backwards from the red, from the oxygen, the sugar, that's cell respiration. So they literally are mirror images of each other for the equation. Here's those 3 cycles again in cell respiration: glycolysis, anaerobic. You don't need this stage to do much more than sitting around. Citric acid is when all of a sudden your body reactions start to kick in. It moves in the mitochondria, you're making more energy. You make another 2 ATPs here, which then moves to electron transport chain. It's like a water wheel. Again, watch the video. That'll make that phrase be understood. And you're making a whole bunch of ATP for your cells. So here's just another sugar from food, which is this molecule here, going into the cytoplasm to do glycolysis. And do we stay here or do we move on? So as I'm moving on, here we go. Another thing that you'll come across in the chapter is food doesn't always go through glycolysis. Like for instance, if you enjoy beer or wine, it goes through a stage called fermentation. And fermentation is where you add yeast to the beverage. And when you add yeast to the beverage, yeast starts to eat the sugar in the beer or the wine. If you only leave the yeast in there a little bit and then take it out, you get sweet wine. If you leave the yeast in there for a long period of time, it eats all the sugar and you get dry wine. That process is glycolysis. But for yeast, we don't use that term. We use fermentation. And you should be familiar with that because when things ferment, you get bubbles, right? When you make bread, you add yeast and you wait for the bread to rise because it's making bubbles. It's fermenting. Sometimes you know things go bad because fermentation starts and it smells stinky. Like wine can start to ferment a second time and it smells like vinegar. So you can use a salad dressing rather than drink it. But that's fermentation. Fermentation is a stage like glycolysis. It's anaerobic. Bacteria and yeast like to ferment, but it's essentially the same process as that first stage glycolysis. So when you come across something called pyruvic acid, or pyruvate, it's also called, just the form you want to use in a sentence. If we take the sugar from food, this is glucose. Glucose is a 6-carbon molecule. That's what that means here, is a 6 and a C. So that means there's 6 carbons. When your body breaks this molecule in half when you eat it, it's then not called glucose anymore. Because when you change the numbers and letters around, it's the same energy, just in a different form. So we take C6 and we turn it into C3. You have 2 C3 molecules now. Those are called pyruvic acid. If you build 2 pyruvic acids together, you make glucose. So that's what this means. And if you break this again, you're going to get a different type of molecule in the end. So we take a pyruvic acid and break it in half. So a carbon 3, and we break the carbon 3 in half. It doesn't do equally, so you have a carbon 2 and then 1 carbon floating around. The carbon 2 is called acetyl-CoA. It's an enzyme. The enzyme builds back up to make more carbohydrates in your body to give you a long sugar release so you can stay full longer. It breaks into half to 2 pyruvic acid, breaks it in half into acetyl-CoA, and it keeps going and going. So your body does recycle. This is why you can live without food for longer than you can without water, because your body does recycle a little bit of this to a point, but that really helps your body. So fermentation, anaerobic, does it without oxygen. When your body ferments, again, it's glycolysis. If your body's not used to the amount of exercise, so all of a sudden it's nice out, you decide you're going to be a weekend warrior and go play basketball with your buddies down at the park because it's open. The next 2 days you can't move, right? You've used muscles you haven't used in a while. Your muscles aren't used to the amount of carbon dioxide that's still in your muscles because you were breathing a lot. You've kept some in your body and some has escaped. Your blood levels aren't used to those levels of CO2, so you stretch. And when you stretch, it releases from your muscles and you're not as sore. If you don't stretch, your body has fermented an amount, and that's called lactic acid. And lactic acid builds up and causes soreness as well. So carbon dioxide and lactic acid make you sore. Now, if we were a bacteria or a yeast, if we were to run and we weren't used to it or play basketball and then go through fermentation, we would then make alcohol. So we'd work out after playing basketball for 2 days and we'd be drunk for the next two days. But because we don't make alcohol as a byproduct, we make lactic acid. Those are the differences. Let's see, these are some common things fermented. Pickles are fermented cucumbers. Olives can be fermented as well if you're not picking them right off the bush. Yogurt is fermented. A lot of our meats, like sandwich meats, are fermented, which makes them last longer, right? Cheeses are fermented, especially stinky cheeses. So all of those things have been fermented. And that's a bacteria or yeast that's used in that process. Like yogurt has good bacteria that's fermented to make the yogurt. So they're used a lot in our environment. So that's about it for the main topics for our cell respiration and our photosynthesis. So if you have any questions, feel free to message me on Canvas. Have a great day.